Hey guys, this is Miss Cunliffe, your intern in math, and I'm going to work on some problems with you today. Today we're going to work on 4.1 percents and fractions. If you'd like to flip to your book on page 148, all right? So we're just going to review some from our lesson today. So the meaning of percents, we need to know the meaning to get started with this. The meaning of percent is per 100, okay? Also, we need to know the symbol for percent. This is the symbol for percent, okay? So now we're going to go ahead and get started. So one of the first things we're going to do is you need to know how to draw to represent a percent, okay? So let's say that we have a picture, okay? So here's our picture. This is a hundreds chart. So inside here, there's 100 squares, okay? Now let's just count. If there's 100 squares in all, how many squares do we think there are across? Okay, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, there's 10 across. Now, how many do we think are in a row above? Okay, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, so it's a 10 by 10, so then we know that for sure there is 100 squares on the inside, okay? So we need to understand that first. Now let's say that I took this and I decided to color 2 rows. Let's say I colored 2 rows, okay? There's my 2 rows colored. So if I have 2 rows colored and I'm trying to find the percent of this right here, I'm trying to find the percent of this. We know there's 100 squares on the inside and I just colored 2 rows. Well, we need to figure out how many squares I colored. If we know 2 rows are colored and there's 10 squares in every row, 10 plus 10, that means there's 20 squares colored. So that means there's 20 squares out of my 100 that are colored. So 20 out of 100, that means I have 20% right here, okay? This is 20% that are colored, okay? Now, we need to figure out how to write that 20% as a fraction. So we actually already figured it out in what we just talked about. So if we know 20 squares are colored, there's 100 in all, bam, that's our fraction. 20 will be our numerator, and 100 is going to be our denominator, okay? So 20 100ths is our fraction. Now, all we gotta do is simplify, okay? So if we're trying to simplify 20 100ths, we need to find our GCF, our greatest common factor. Now, these are some big numbers, so an easier way to think about this would be, let's just think about money, okay? Now, the GCF is going to end up being $20, is going to be 20, okay? And the reason I figured that out is that how many $20 bills does it take to get to $100? Well, it takes 5 $20 bills to get to 100, all right? And we already have our 20 up here, so we know that's one $20 bill. So then we just simplified our fraction into 1/5, and that's our final answer. All right? Next, we're gonna go on to our next one. All right, so now we're gonna work with 60%. We need to now draw 60% on this hundreds chart, all right? So if we have to draw 60%, we know there's 100 squares. We're gonna have to color in 60 of those, okay? So if we're gonna have to color in 60, I'm gonna color in 6 full rows, all right? All right, so here's our 60 rows, our 60 squares colored in, which is 6 rows. So now we're gonna take this percent. We need to write this percent as a fraction, okay? So we have 60% and we're gonna turn it into a fraction. So we already, just like the last one, okay? We're gonna have 60 as our numerator and 100 as our denominator. I know that because I have 60 squares colored in, but I have 100 in all, okay? So the fraction will be 60 hundredths, all right? Next, we're going to have to simplify, okay? So when we simplify, let's think of this as money again. Why not, all right? How many $20 bills does it take to get 100? Well, it takes 5 $20 bills. How many $20 bills does it take to get $60? 3. Our new simplified fraction is 3/5, okay? So now it gets a little weird. Let's say they gave us 7/10 and they told us, hey, you need to draw 7/10 on your square. You need to color it in. Well, that seems pretty hard, don't you think? So we got to think of this in a different way. Now we're used to seeing our fractions when we color them with 100 as the denominator, all right? So why don't we just go ahead and do that, make it easier on ourselves. Let's go ahead and make our denominator 100. Well, what do you have to do to 10 to make 10 times what will give you a denominator of 100? Well, 10 times 10 gives you a denominator of 100. So what we do to the bottom, you always have to do the top, don't forget. So we have to do 7 times 10. So 7 times 10 is 70. So look at that. Now I think that you would know how to color this in. So now we got 70 hundredths. So that means we're going to color 7 rows, all right? So here's our 70 rows colored in. Our 7 rows colored in. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? So next what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to write this as a percent. Okay? We're kind of going backwards this time. Okay? So we took our 7/10, which is our fraction it gave us at first, turned it into a fraction we're more comfortable with, which is 70 hundredths. We colored it in on our hundreds chart to make a visual representation for ourselves. Now we're going to turn it into a percent, okay? So 70 hundredths is going to be 70%, all right? Over 100. All right, now next, here's something else that's kind of weird. Really pay attention on this one. Let's say you come to something that looks like this, okay? You're gonna have 2 squares, 2 of our hundreds chart, okay? One's fully colored, and then one's partially colored, all right? So now we're gonna have to figure out what is the percent of this, all right? So let's just start slow. And this one, how many squares are colored in? Well, we know there's 100 inside and the whole thing's colored, so we know there's 100 squares colored in. Now let's go to our second one, okay? Let's see how many rows are colored in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 fully colored rows, and then I have 4 off over here to the side. So that means I have 74 colored on this side, okay? So we have 100 over here and 74 over here. Now let's not make this too hard on ourselves, guys. Our percent is going to be our 100 plus our 74, which equals 174%, okay? Because it's as if you're thinking about you got 100% over here and 74% over here. Just add them both together, bam, there you go. 174%, okay? Now we're gonna have to write our fraction. Now, don't let this scare you. Keep doing the same thing you've always been doing, all right? You're gonna take your number, your 174, you're gonna put it over 100, okay? Just like that, all right? So it's 174 hundredths as your fraction. But guys, we cannot leave it there, okay? We do have to simplify it down, all right? So what we can do first is we know that both of these can be, to find our GCF, it's 2. Both of them can be divided by 2, okay? So 174 divided by 2 is going to give you 87. Now 100 divided by 2 is going to give you 50. So that's our simplified fraction is 87/50, okay? But we still can't stop there, guys. You gotta keep going. You gotta simplify even farther. Turn that into a mixed number. Mixed number by taking your denominator and seeing how many times it can go into your numerator. Well, 50 can only go into 87 one time. So we're gonna make our big number 1. And now we gotta figure out what our numerator is gonna be. To figure that out, 50 went into 87 one time. So now we have to figure out what's left over. So that'd be 87 minus 50, which will give you 37, okay? And always remember that denominator just stays the same. Don't do anything crazy with it. Keep it on in there, okay? So now you got 1 and 37/50, okay? That's your new fraction, worked all the way out. So here's your picture, your diagram. You knew the percent was 174%. The fraction was 1/74 hundredths. To simplify it, you got to find that GCF, which we figured out was 2. That gave you our new fraction of 87/50. Then, can't stop there, move on to that mixed number, 1/37/50, okay? So that's how you work out a problem like that when you got two pictures. Gets a little crazy with a bigger percent like that. Over 100, it starts getting a little messy, but just take it slow and it'll be pretty easy. Next, we're going to move on. Let's say that it just gave you 123%, okay? And it said, we want you to put this into a fraction. All right, we can do this, guys. Don't panic. Move this on into a fraction. Our numerator is going to be 123. You go ahead and take that number, put it on 123, okay? Put it right over there on the numerator. Put your 100 on the bottom, all right? Because percent per 100, right? Per 100. Now, don't forget, we need to see, is there a GCF? Can we simplify this? Always check. This one, there's actually not a GCF, okay? But we got to keep on moving. Turn that into your mixed number, okay? So 100 can go into 123 one time, make your big number 1. What's left over? 123 minus 100 is 23. Don't forget that denominator. You always keep the denominator. Move that 100 right on over, okay? So then this would be your final answer. You just took a percent and changed it into a fraction, okay? Next, what we're going to do is, let's say you're given 31/50, okay? And it says they want you to turn this fraction into a percent. All right, so we got to turn it into a percent. Well, we're always used to having this 100 on the bottom, right? Let's keep it that way, guys. Let's make it simple on ourselves, all right? So 50 times what will give you 100? That'll be times 2. 50 times 2 gives you 100. Got to do to the top. Got to do to the top what you do to the bottom. 31 times 2 is 62. All right, now this looks a lot more familiar, right? I know y'all can turn this fraction into a percent. So now 62 hundredths is going to be 62%, just like that. So you started out with this 31/50, and you turned into 62%. All right, guys, now we're going to move on down. We're going to work more on turning percents into fractions. Let's say they gave us 45%, okay? And we had to turn that 45% into a fraction. We'll go ahead and start off. We know we can put 45 as our numerator and 100 as our denominator, just like that. But do not forget to simplify. That's very important. We've got to find our GCF. Well, for this equation, I see that my GCF is 5 because I know my 5's times tables, and I know that that's going to be the biggest one that'll go into both. All right, so now you know that 5 goes into 100 20 times, and 5 goes into 45 9 times. Your new fraction is 9/20, okay? Now let's move on and let's turn fractions into percents. All right, for this one, we're going to try a tricky one first off, okay, guys? This one is going to be 13/16. They give you this fraction. All right, guys, when this happens, I normally tell you, keep that 100 denominator going through, but we can't do that with this one, all right? We're gonna have to, work it out all the way through. Nothing times 16 will give you 100. So we're gonna have to eliminate this method when we get to problems like this, okay? But don't fret, we're just going to divide out our fraction like we've done in the past, all right? Don't worry about it. So when we're setting up our problem, you always have to remember the denominator goes on the outside of the house, the numerator's on the inside, okay? Make sure you set that up. Well, first off, can 16 go into 1? Nah, put an X. Can 16 go into 13? Nope, put an X. All right, so now, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? Don't forget, put that decimal in there. Throw a 0 in there, okay? How many times can 16 go into 130? All right, 16 can go in there 8 times. Put your 8 on in there. 16 times 8 is 128. 30 minus 128 gives you 20, okay? I'm sorry, it gives you 2. I apologize. I wrote that wrong, guys. It gives you 2. Got a little ahead of myself there. Now you have 2. You're going to have to throw another 0 on in there. Don't forget, bring that 0 down. How many times does 16 go into 20? 16 goes into 20 one time. So 20 minus 16 gives you 4. All right, we're still going. Throw another 0 in there. Bring it on down. How many times does 16 go into 40? 16 goes into 42 times because 16 times 2 equals 32. So now we have to subtract again. 40 minus 32, that's going to give you 8. We're still going, guys. Throw that 0 on in there. Bring that 0 on down. 80. So how many times does 16 go into 80? Well, it actually goes in there 5 times, evenly. So 16 times 5 is 80. Now we have nothing left, and we're finished. So we end up with a decimal that looks like this. All right, so now to turn a decimal into a percent, we learned this in our last chapter, okay? But just a little refresher, you move this decimal point 2 spaces, 1, 2. All right, so now it's going to turn out to 81.25%. All right, so that right there is going to be your percent, okay? Now let's go on to one that's a little bit easier, okay? Not all of them are going to be that hard. Let's say they give you 17/20. And now you're going to have to turn the 17/20 into a percent. Well, this one, we can make it as 100 on the bottom, okay? We can make it easy for ourselves. 20 times what gives you 100? Well, I know 5 $20 bills is $100. So I know 20 times 5 is 100. So what you do to the bottom, you got to do to the top. 17 times 5 is 85, all right? Now, 85 hundredths as a percent, easy peasy, would be 85%, okay? That one's a lot simpler. We're going to work on one more. Now, what if it tells you to turn your mixed number into a percent? Well, don't worry about it. We can do this. If it gives you 6 3/20, okay? Now, we're going to have to work this into a percent, okay? Now, let's think small first. Let's just look at this 3/20 first. Let's work with this. 3/20, let's go ahead and make that denominator as 100. Make it easier on ourselves. 20 times what gives us 100? We just learned that it's 5. So 20 times 5 equals 100. Do the same to the top as you did to the bottom. 3 times 5 is 15. So now we have this 15 hundredths, all right? And don't forget about this 6 though, okay? So we're going to remember this 6 over here. So we know 15 hundredths is just 15%, right? But with added on, this is 600% right here, just by itself. This is 600, okay? So our 15% plus our 600% is going to give you 615%, okay? So don't fret. Know that whole number would mean whatever that number is, 100. So this would be 600. If it was a 2, it would be 200, okay? Look at the fraction and just start small, okay? We took our 3/20ths, turn it into where we wanted our denominator as 100, because that's the way we like it, all right? 20 times 5, 100. Got to do to the top what you do to the bottom. 3 times 5 is 15. 1500s, we knew 1500s with 15% right off the bat. Added on that 600%. Don't want to forget about that 6, that'll mess up your answer. Add it together, 615% in all. All right, guys. So that is the lesson for today. If you have any questions, you can always come and see me for PE, okay? Or at the end of the day during buses. Just let me know if you need any help, okay? I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.